The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
Good morning here at 5 a.m. Good to have you with us. I'm Maddie Jansen alongside Alex Fisher. So it seems like we're coming to the end of another heat wave, which I'm going to be very grateful for because the temperatures look really nice at the end of the week.
Yeah, that is the good news. The bad news, unfortunately, though, is that Caldor fire that continues to burn. And you know, Kev, we've been talking about this fire for a while now, but now it's getting closer to South Lake Tahoe. A lot of people vacation up there.
A lot of vacationers up that way. And from what I have read, about 22,000 residents have been asked to evacuate.
Your time now is 5:03. America's longest war is over. The Pentagon announced that the last flight has left Afghanistan ahead of today's deadline for a full withdrawal. But what about the future? Preventing terror attacks and the nearly 200 Americans left behind. Tracy Potts has a story.
Maddie, good morning. Good morning, everyone. This was a dangerous mission to the very end. The U.S. military says they were thwarting attacks by ISIS in the final hours. The last soldier to leave Afghanistan, marking the end of America's longest war.
I'm here to announce the completion of our withdrawal from Afghanistan.
The last flight out ends the largest non-combat airlift in U.S. history, moving more than 120,000 people, including 6,000 U.S. citizens. The State Department is tracking up to 200 Americans left behind.
We will keep working to help them. Our commitment to them has no deadline.
My question to the Secretary was, what is the plan? What is the plan now to get Americans out?
President Biden speaks to the nation this afternoon, defending his decision not to extend today's withdrawal deadline. In a statement, he says it was the unanimous recommendation of the Joint Chiefs and of all of our commanders on the ground that ending our military mission was the best way to protect the lives of our troops and those who still want to leave. The Taliban promises safe passage, celebrating the U.S. departure with gunfire. A $1 trillion war is now over. More than 2,400 Americans lost their lives, including 13 in last week's airport attack.
She's very caring, loving, just a good girl, a good lady.
As the war ends, grief for many is just beginning. Also beginning the diplomatic effort with Afghanistan, dealing with this country with no working embassy, no military on the ground, and no roadmap for a government led by America's longtime enemy. I'm Tracy Potts, 17 News.
And while local veterans respond to the U.S. deaths in Afghanistan, restaurants across Bakersfield reserve tables and full glasses of beer in memory of the fallen. Kern County is home to thousands of veterans. And though the attack on U.S. service members happened overseas, the effects are being felt here at home. Dick Taylor with the Patriots of Kern says the situation in Afghanistan was avoidable.
It's a giant crap show, for lack of a better term. I think all of us thought it was time to get out of Afghanistan for the most part, and it is an embarrassment. Certainly, I feel so bad for the families of those that have lost loved ones, whether they be Marines or sailors or soldiers or Air Force personnel.
Meantime, Bakersfield restaurants and bars like Saunders, Chewy's, and Crusaders set aside a table with full glasses of beer to represent each of the lost lives in Afghanistan. Crusaders is owned and operated by veterans. They say they offer a pay-it-forward beer program if you ever want to treat someone from law enforcement, first responders, or the military to a cold brew.
This morning, promising news on the French fire burning across the Kern River Valley as firefighters continue to gain more control of the blaze. The fire has burned more than 25,000 acres, and this morning it's 33% contained. More than 1,500 firefighters are working on the French fire. Evacuation orders are beginning to be downgraded to warnings in multiple communities. Here's a look at the current evacuation map. The bright red is the fire perimeter itself. The lighter red spots are areas still under evacuation orders, including Alta Sierra and Shirley Meadows. Wofford Heights, Dutch Flats, and French Gulch now under evacuation warnings, seen in yellow. The community of Kernville and River Kern now in the clear with evacuation warnings lifted.
Clients have been able to go home. back to their homes, but we're still open and ready to serve anyone who still needs a place to stay.
They feel pretty confident the fire is reacting to our work, and as long as we can, continue that, we should be successful.
Meantime, the American Red Cross has consolidated its 2 shelters in Lake Isabella. The shelter's located at Woodrow Wallace Elementary. And you can see all of our coverage on the French fire, including the up-to-the-minute updates on evacuation orders and warnings, and how to donate to the Red Cross as it provides food, shelter, and security to those impacted by the fire. Just go to our website, kget.com.
Now to the Caldor fire moving toward Lake Tahoe. We just heard Kevin talking about it. This morning, tens of thousands of people have been told to evacuate as firefighters do all they can to save the popular tourist town. Rowena Shaddux has more.
Flames blanketed the hill behind the Caltrans station in Myers as countless firefighters guarded the area below. We're not quite sure where that boom came from or exactly what it was, but it resonated so loudly along Highway 50 that it was enough to know the fire was causing great havoc. Just up from there, overlooking Christmas Valley, huge flames enveloped this house, crashing it to the ground. Sadly, that devastating reality will be hitting home to countless people in El Dorado County. Here in the town of Phillips, just outside Sierra at Tahoe, what once was a lively, close-knit neighborhood is nothing but ash and rubble. The only remnant of homes that were there are the brick chimneys standing alone. At the Echo Summit grade, fast-moving flames move dangerously close in no time at all. CAL FIRE is right behind us. They're actually clearing us from this lookout point, telling us to get over to Myers because the flames are right behind us, and we don't even have 5 minutes. Further down from that location, the flames continue to burn towards South Lake Tahoe, where an evacuation order remains in effect.
We have some people that help us do our press conferences, and we're going to make sure that we can escort them safely over 50. We don't even know if we can get over there safely. The fire is active right now on Highway 89 and several different spot fires that they're trying to contain right now. So it's really dynamic out here, very active. I can feel the winds. Please, everyone, just stay safe and stay out of this area.
And that was Rowena Shaddux reporting. The owners of a Tahoe ski resort are getting creative to ward off the Caldor fire using their snowmaking machines to fight the flames. The resort pre-positioned its snow guns to spray water on the property. The fire did burn trees on the ski resort's grounds, but the buildings were saved by fire crews and the resort's equipment. As mentioned, evacuation orders were issued yesterday for all of South Lake Tahoe after the massive fire experienced a rapid spread, according to CAL FIRE.
Meantime, state emergency management officials gave an update yesterday on the state and federal response to wildfires burning across our state. Officials say they continue to take an all-hands-on-deck approach to California's wildfire situation. Across the state, more than 15,000 people are working to fight 15 major wildfires across the state, and with help coming from Utah, Washington, Wisconsin, and West Virginia.
This support is a broad spectrum of military capability, from space-based platforms down to boots on the ground, where we're providing fire suppression, incident awareness, and support to law enforcement.
Another 250 active duty military members are being prepped to help respond to fires throughout the state. You know, it is incredible to see how many. You've got 15,000 firefighters. That is a big number. But when you see how destructive these fires are, it does make sense why you need all of this manpower on the front lines. I think the example that should give us a lot of hope is what we saw here locally with the French fire. And remember how just a couple of last week that fire picked up and went through so many popular communities up in Wofford Heights and Alta Sierra, and so many structures were saved. You saw that firsthand.
Yeah, Alta Sierra especially. That's you know, where everything was burned on the ground around those cabins and those homes, and yet those homes were still standing. So yeah, they will at times position one crew per house in order to save structures in a neighborhood like that.
So hopefully we can see something like this up north. Recapping our top stories on this Tuesday morning, America's longest war is over. The Pentagon announced the last flight has left Afghanistan ahead of today's deadline for a full withdrawal. More than 2,400 Americans lost their lives during the war, excuse me, including 13 in last week's airport attack. President Biden will address the nation later this afternoon. Promising news of the French fire this morning as firefighters continue to gain more control of the blaze. The fire has burned more than 25,000 acres and is 33% contained. Evacuation orders have been downgraded in multiple communities. This as tens of thousands of South Lake Tahoe residents have been told to evacuate. Firefighters are doing all they can to save the popular tourist town from the fast-moving Caldor fire. That blaze has burned more than 186,000 acres. Containment dropped to 15% from 19% on Sunday.
New this morning, California lawmakers will not consider a sweeping coronavirus vaccine mandate this year. With less than 2 weeks remaining in the legislative session, Assemblymember Buffy Wicks of Oakland said yesterday she would not pursue a bill to create a vaccine or test requirement for every California worker. Her decision also applies to proof of vaccination for bars, restaurants, and entertainment venues. The provision for workplaces came close to being completed, Wicks said, but there was not enough time to fully develop the details, including who would pay for testing for employees who are not vaccinated. Wicks noted the proposal could return when the legislature reconvenes in January.
While California workers will not be required to get the shot, at least for now, businesses still have the freedom to implement their own vaccine mandates. This comes amid boardroom discussions in at least 2 energy sector companies with deep Kern County connections. 17's Robert Price has the story.
Chevron, the second largest oil company in the nation, is apparently taking the pandemic seriously. It's requiring employees who work on offshore oil rigs to be vaccinated. Same goes for those who work overseas. But what about the 800 employees who work here in Kern County? They're encouraged to roll up their sleeves, but if they haven't already, they're not required. Not yet. But as the Wall Street Journal reports, the company is considering the feasibility of mandating COVID-19 vaccinations for all 47,000 employees. However, a local Chevron spokesman says the company has no plans to require vaccinations for employees in its San Joaquin Valley business operations, but will abide by any applicable laws that might direct Chevron to do otherwise. Chevron did recently order its employees to work remotely again after having allowed them to return to local corporate offices. Kern County Public Health Director Bryn Kerrigan said businesses are free to make their own decisions about vaccinating employees.
Asking your employees to do something that would prevent the transmission of COVID-19 is a great thing to do, but I think you need to also give them alternatives as well. The facts show that over 99% of our cases are in those that are unvaccinated. The facts show that vaccine is the safest, most effective way to prevent the transmission of COVID-19.
Chevron, which has had COVID outbreaks in the Gulf of Mexico and the Permian Basin of Texas and New Mexico, is not the only oil and gas company that's concerned with the rising number of infections. Schlumberger, the top oil field service company in the U.S., which has a substantial presence in Kern County, is asking its U.S. employees to disclose their vaccination status because more and more of its customers are mandating vaccinations as a condition for working on their job sites. Bakersfield-based Era Energy, one of the state's largest oil producers, said in a statement it has no immediate plans to require its employees to be vaccinated. Requests for comment from Schlumberger as well as Bakersfield-based Berry Petroleum were not immediately returned. Pressure is mounting on unvaccinated Americans to either face the needle or face consequences, most likely money or convenience. But if you're a Bakersfield employee of Chevron, you still have choices, for now. In Bakersfield, Robert Price, 17 News.
Meantime, State Senator Shannon Grove is speaking out about potential vaccine requirements. She issued the following statement yesterday. It reads in part, "Let me be clear, I will under no circumstance support any bill that mandates vaccine passports. I am 100% supportive of people making their own vaccination choices, and government must respect their private right to make those decisions without coercion or punitive action."
Now to the latest on the coronavirus pandemic in Kern County as Public Health released new data yesterday showing startling new numbers. Nearly 1,500 new cases were reported along with 4 new deaths. Now, keep in mind, this update includes data from over the weekend. On average, 462 people are testing positive for the virus every day here in Kern County. August has now become our deadliest month since April, when vaccines were not widely available. By our count, at least 93 people have died since vaccines became available to everyone. And remember, those 12 and older who want a vaccine can make an appointment for all local vaccination sites. Just visit the website myturn.ca.gov.
17 News is your local election headquarters. The California governor recall election is exactly 2 weeks away. And the closer we get, the more questions voters might have. The mail-in ballot in the envelope voters received lists just 2 questions. Should Newsom be removed from office? And if so, who should replace him? Once you've filled out the ballot, seal it in the envelope it came in and sign the back of the envelope. You can pop that envelope in the mail, no postage required. Of course, you might prefer to vote in person, which you can do in a couple of ways. Number 1, drop your completed and signed mail-in ballot at a polling location or ballot box, or cast your vote using an in-person ballot at a polling location. If you're going to use an in-person ballot, be sure to bring and surrender your mail-in ballot at the polling location. The date for California's recall election is September 14th. 5:38 is your time now. Today, local activist group The Next Steps is inviting community members to a vigil to raise awareness of gang violence. The group's holding the event from 6:30 to 7:30 tonight at the Liberty Bell in downtown Bakersfield. Event organizers say it will be a night promoting hope and justice and supporting victims of violence and their families. Survivors will speak along with officials like District Attorney Cynthia Zimmer and several other advocacy groups.
The Bakersfield City Council is expected to approve a resolution tomorrow to build a memorial honoring Kern County's World War II veterans and those who served in other roles during the war. The resolution was proposed by the Kern County World War II Veterans Memorial nonprofit organization. It seeks to build a new memorial at Jastrow Park on Truxton Avenue. The nonprofit says it will cover all expenses of designing and building the memorial.
The Kern County Board of Supervisors is scheduled to hold hearings today on the final fiscal year 2021-22 recommended budget. The budgets for numerous county departments are among those on the agenda that are expected to be approved by a final vote. County leaders hope after a year of so much misery and economic challenges that this balanced budget will lift the county to recovery. It includes just over $248 million for the Sheriff's Department and more than $150 million for the Fire Department.
Tomorrow, the Bakersfield City Council will once again take up a controversial anti-camping ordinance. You may remember last month when the Los Angeles City Council passed a sweeping anti-camping measure to remove widespread homeless encampments across the city. The measure was billed as a compassionate approach to get people off the streets and restore access to public spaces, though critics say it criminalizes homelessness. A presentation on the issue is scheduled to happen during tomorrow's meeting, along with an update on the Brundage Lane Navigation Center.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.